A crystal tray crashed onto marble, the sound cut the air like thunder, and 200 guests froze in silence. Dance a waltz, then. Prove it. Richard Caldwell sneered, his voice rising above the murmurs. His glass pointed at Maya Johnson, the black woman kneeling on the floor, shards trembling in her hands. This was the grand opening of Caldwell Enterprises' new tower, a night of champagne and power, yet all eyes now rested on a cleaner of just 3 weeks. Dad. "Stop," whispered Daniel Caldwell, embarrassed, desperate, to end his father's cruelty. But Richard ignored him, drunk on whiskey and authority. "No, let me finish," he said, striding to the center as if it were his courtroom. "This woman can't even balance a tray, so why not test if she can move to a beat?" Maya stayed low, her hands sweeping glass into her palm, but her eyes betrayed no shame, no fear, only a still calm, as if she were measuring every insult, every laugh, every stare of disdain. Mr. Harris, the event manager, stepped forward nervously. "Sir, maybe it's best if—" "Better nothing," Richard snapped, waving theatrically for silence. "Play a waltz. If she dances better than my wife, I'll marry my son to her tonight." Imagine that, the heir of Caldwell, wealth tied to the cleaning lady. Laughter rippled like a cruel wave, women covering their mouths in mock shock, men shaking their heads as if this were fine entertainment. But Maya rose slowly, brushed her hands on her apron, and locked eyes with Richard. The silence thickened until she spoke. "I accept." The orchestra faltered. The crowd gasped. Richard blinked, certain he had misheard. "What did you say?" he muttered, his arrogance cracking. "Accept your challenge," Maya repeated, her faint smile enough to send a chill through some of the guests. "But when I dance better than your wife, you will honor your words, even if you thought it was just a joke. Have you ever been underestimated, mocked, treated as if you were invisible, only to rise stronger than anyone imagined? Share your story in the comments and tell us where you're watching from." The laughter grew louder, many certain they would witness humiliation, but none noticing. The quiet fire in Maya's eyes, the same fire that once lit the stages of the world, before one night of tragedy stole her life away. If this story of prejudice and reversal is stirring something inside you, subscribe now, because what comes next will prove that underestimating someone can be the costliest mistake of all. Eleanor Caldwell, Richard's wife, well known for her elite dance lessons, stepped forward with a sharp smile. "Darling, do you think I should waste my time with this?" she asked, motioning coldly toward Maya. "Don't be modest, Eleanor," Richard replied, savoring the cruelty. "You won that club trophy last year. That should be more than enough for this little contest." Maya stood still, but her thoughts drifted 15 years back to the time she was known as Maya Leone. Principal dancer with the Royal City Ballet, she remembered nights when crowds leapt to their feet, reviews comparing her to the greatest performers in history, the weightless feeling of flying across the most prestigious stages in the world. Then came the night that ended everything, a gala for the political elite, a car crash on the way home, 3 months in a coma, and the cruel awakening to a new reality. Her legs would never be the same again. Doctors warned she'd be lucky to walk normally, and as for dancing professionally, they said it was impossible. "Daniel," Richard barked suddenly, turning to his. "Son, go get your camera. I want this moment recorded for posterity, the night a cleaner pretended to be a dancer at my event." Daniel froze, visibly uncomfortable. "Dad, this is too much. She was just doing her job." "The girl," Richard snapped, "accepted my challenge, and now she'll entertain us. Unless you'd prefer I remind your girlfriend about last week's little secret." Daniel's face drained of color. Maya realized this was not just mockery, but blackmail. Another cruel reminder of the toxic grip Richard had on everyone near him. Put the music on. Richard ordered the DJ, and let's place bets. $500 if my wife wins, $1,000 if anyone dares back the employee. Cruel laughter spread. Some guests tossing money as if it were a circus show. Eleanor stepped into the center, stretching theatrically, showing off her years of private dance lessons. Richard smirked as he moved closer to Maya. You know what? When you lose, and you will lose, you'll drop to your knees and apologize for wasting our time, and of course, you're fired. Something shifted in Maya's eyes. The same fire that once carried her across international stages, the same strength that pulled her through months of therapy, the same dignity that refused to die, even when everything else had Mr. Caldwell, she said softly, her calm tone sending a chill across the room. When I win, and I will win, you'll honor your promise about the marriage, but I also want something more. Richard raised an eyebrow, amused. Oh, now she wants to negotiate. Very well, amuse me. What else do you want besides? My son's hand I want you to admit, in front of every person here, that you judged me wrongly for my skin and for my work, and I want a public apology. The room stiffened. Voices dropped to whispers, the crowd realizing this had turned into something far more serious. Richard laughed. Loud and dismissive, you've got nerve. I'll grant you that, fine, I accept. But when you make a fool of yourself, you'll leave this place not just without a job, but without a shred of dignity. What Richard Caldwell didn't realize was that he was about to face not just a cleaner with a hidden past, but a woman who had already lost everything once and knew exactly what it meant to fight for every scrap of respect in a world that had rejected her. While Eleanor rehearsed simple ballroom steps at the center, Maya stood motionless in the corner, her silence heavy, but her mind sharp as steel. 15 years of brutal therapy, learning to walk again, accepting she would never be the same, had forged a resilience none of those pampered guests could begin to understand. Look at her, one guest whispered. She's probably never even set foot on a dance floor. What a pointless humiliation. Richard prowled like a predator, collecting bets, feeding on the cruelty he had created. $500, says she won't even finish the song without tripping $1,000. If you think she'll run off in the middle, he announced, raising his glass as laughter rolled across the room. But Maya noticed something Richard did not. His son Daniel wasn't laughing. Instead, he shifted uneasily by the wall, his eyes lowered, his face tense. And then Maya remembered. She had seen him before weeks ago, the young man who treated the workers with respect, the only one among the executives who did. Miss, a low voice murmured. Maya turned. A black man in his 60s wearing the discreet uniform of security stood beside her. I'm Marcus, head of security. I've worked here 20 years, he said, pretending to check his radio. I saw you dance, he whispered, 15 years ago at the Grand Theater. Maya Leone, principal soloist, I was security there too. Her heart skipped. Someone recognized her. After all these years hiding, living anonymous jobs just to survive, someone finally knew who she really was. I thought you died. In that crash, Marcus continued softly, the papers said you'd never dance again. The papers said many things, Maya replied calmly. Not all of them. True. Marcus nodded slowly. What they did to you was unjust, and what they're doing now? He glanced at Richard still. Laughing loudly is even worse. It was then Maya made the decision she had delayed for 15 years. Not only about dancing, but about owning who she truly was. Marcus, she said, I need a favor. When I dance, no matter what happens, I need you to record everything, especially the reactions. He looked puzzled, but nodded, of course. But why? Because Maya smiled faintly for the first time that night. Some people need to be reminded that underestimating someone by appearance can be the most expensive mistake of their lives. Meanwhile, Richard raised his voice above the crowd. You know what? Let's make this more fun. If she finishes the song without falling or stopping, I'll hand her $1,000. But when she fails, and she will fail, she'll scrub this entire hall on her knees in front of every single one of us. The crowd burst into laughter mixed with uneasy murmurs, some finally sensing the line had been crossed, but no one dared to stand against Richard Caldwell. Dad, Daniel tried again. This has gone too far. Shut up, Daniel, Richard snapped. You're too soft, and that's exactly why you need to learn how the real world works. There's a natural order, and people like her, he pointed at Maya, need to remember their place. At that moment, Maya began to move, not toward the floor to dance, but to stretch, small, subtle motions invisible to most eyes, but Marcus recognized them instantly. The same warm-ups she once performed backstage at the Grand Theater. My God, he whispered, she's really going to do this. Eleanor, noticing a tension shift toward Maya, stepped forward. Start the music, she ordered. Let's end this little charade. The DJ, visibly uncomfortable, played a classical waltz. Eleanor began her routine. Polished enough for social clubs, predictable steps, rehearsed elegance, the kind that impressed wealthy friends but revealed no true artistry. Still, the audience clapped politely because to them she embodied their world, rich, white, groomed in. Private lessons. Well done, darling, Richard shouted with theatrical applause. And now, it's time for our guest. Maya walked slowly to the center, each step precise, dignified, a weight in her presence that unsettled the crowd. This was not the posture of someone already beaten. What song do you want? The DJ asked nervously. The same one, Maya answered softly, from the start. Richard laughed. Oh, she wants a second chance. How charming. Play it again. Let's see how long she lasts before quitting. What none of them knew was that Maya had chosen this piece deliberately, a waltz she had danced hundreds of times, etched into her muscles, woven into her soul. It was one of her last triumphs before the accident, a performance that earned a 5-minute ovation, praised by critics as transcendent. One of the most devastatingly emotional dances in history. As the silence stretched, Maya closed her eyes, letting herself drift back 15 years to that night when she soared across the stage, when each note was a pulse through her veins, when she knew she had been born for this. The doctors had sworn she would never dance again. The media declared her career over, and for years she herself had believed them, until slowly, painfully, she rebuilt her strength, her trust in her body, her bond with movement. She never returned to public stages, never sought applause, but in secret, through the hardest nights of her life, she never stopped dancing. The music began, and with it, something extraordinary was about to unfold in that hollow place, heavy with arrogance and prejudice. Under the weight of mocking stares, Maya lifted her hands with a precision so sharp that even some of the musicians frowned instinctively, sensing they were about to witness more than a simple dance. None of them knew that the first few notes would mark not only the rebirth of a fallen star, but the moment the entire balance of power in that room would begin to crumble. The waltz filled the air, and Maya moved, not with hesitant steps as expected, but with a rising grace that seemed to bend gravity itself. At first her motions were delicate, almost modest, keeping expectations low, but as the music swelled, her body answered with strength and fluidity, each turn sharper, each step deeper. Her movements saturated with emotion. Richard stopped laughing. Eleanor stopped smiling. The entire room shifted, realizing they weren't watching a cleaner trying to impress, but an artist reclaiming her destiny. My God, someone whispered. She's... Exceptional Maya spun through a line of pirouettes that would test any seasoned ballerina, then soared into a grand jeté, her body suspended in air as though physics itself had stepped aside. This was no ballroom routine. This was classical ballet, of the highest caliber, reimagined within the rhythm of a waltz. Marcus, true to his promise, kept his phone aimed at both the stage and the audience, capturing every shift in expression, especially Richard's face as it turned from ridicule to confusion and then to fear. "This is impossible," Richard whispered. "Who is this woman?" Then came the sequence, the signature fusion of classical techniques Maya had once created herself, a combination known only to those who had seen her grace the grandest. "Stages wait!" a patron gasped. "I know those steps. I've seen that exact sequence before, but where Daniel stood frozen, camera in hand, his eyes wide. Knowing brilliance when he saw it, unlike his father, he did not care who carried it. The music surged to its peak, and Maya launched into a breathtaking chain of fouettes, turn after turn, spinning endlessly on one leg with the mastery of years, of sacrifice, technique, and strength in perfect union. The final note struck, and she landed in a pose both fierce and vulnerable, arms open, head lifted, breathing steady, her dignity unbroken. Silence followed, the kind that feels like eternity, the kind that happens only when an audience witnesses something greater than they ever imagined. Then a single clap broke it, followed by another, and within seconds the entire hall erupted, everyone on their feet, applause crashing like thunder against the windows. "Bravo!" someone shouted. "Extraordinary!" cried another. Richard's face was pale, humiliated before the city's elite, their eyes now full of disapproval and shame directed at him, and then Marcus stepped forward, still recording, his voice clear and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to reintroduce Maya Leone, former principal soloist of the Royal City Ballet." Name detonated through the hall like a bombshell. Gasps, shouts, hands to mouths. A legend thought gone, forever revealed before their eyes. Impossible. Eleanor stammered. "Maya Leone is dead, or at least she never danced again after the accident." "Clearly not," Maya answered, her voice calm but sharp. "The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated." The crowd laughed uneasily, but Richard Caldwell wasn't laughing at all. Reality hit him like a freight train. He had mocked and humiliated one of the greatest performers in history. And worse, it had all been caught on tape. "Mr. Caldwell," Marcus said firmly, still holding his phone, "you declared that if she danced better than your wife, you would marry her to your son, and I believe every single person in this hall can confirm that the condition has been more than met." Daniel, realizing where this was heading, stepped toward Miss Leone. He said softly, "I want to publicly apologize for my father's behavior. It was shameful and inexcusable." "Shut up, Daniel," Richard snapped, his mask of control finally cracking. "You will not apologize to anyone, especially not to her." That was the moment Maya revealed the depth of her plan. "Mr. Caldwell," she said calmly, "I believe we have a marriage arrangement to discuss. After all, a man of your standing surely keeps his word, doesn't he?" The room froze, every guest aware they were witnessing more than a simple contest. This was about truth, power, and justice. "You must be out of your mind if you think I'll honor." "A drunken joke," Richard spat, desperation twisting his arrogance. "It wasn't a joke," Maya replied with a faint smile. "Marcus, please, play back his words." Marcus lifted the phone, and the recording filled the hall, Richard's own voice mocking. Maya raising the stakes, setting the conditions, and promising before 200 witnesses that his son would marry her if she triumphed. The guests murmured, some laughing nervously, others shifting uncomfortably at the trap. Richard had set for himself. "That's blackmail," Richard shouted, losing all composure. "No," Maya corrected softly. "This is accountability. You made a public wager with clear terms. And now the question is simple. Are you a man of your word, or is your reputation worth less than your prejudice?" Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady. "Miss Leone, if you allow me, I will honor my father's promise, not because I'm forced, but because any man would be honored to stand beside someone with your talent and dignity." The room gasped, surprised by the sudden turn toward romance. Richard was shaking with rage. "Daniel, if you go through with this, you are out of the company, out of the family, out of everything." "Then so be it," Daniel replied, offering his hand to Maya. "Some things matter more than money. Dad, like integrity." Maya looked at his hand, then at the audience, then at Richard, who was unraveling before them all. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, 15 years ago, people like you decided I was worthless, the moment I became imperfect. And tonight, You tried to strip me of dignity because of my skin and because of my work, but I've learned something. True nobility doesn't come from money or inheritance. It comes from how we treat others when we think no one is watching. She turned toward Daniel. Your son seems to understand that lesson despite your best efforts. As for your proposal, she smiled. I'll accept dinner with him, but marriage. Well, that's something two people choose together, built on love and respect, not on cruel bets. The audience erupted in applause, not just for the dance, but for the dignity and wisdom Maya had displayed. Richard realized he had lost more than a wager. He had lost the respect of every person in that hall, including his own son. He muttered about leaving it to the lawyers and stormed out, Eleanor following behind, her face burning with humiliation. Marcus stopped recording, smiling as he approached Maya. This is going to get very interesting when it hits social media. Around the room, the city's elite tried to process what they had just witnessed. A brutal lesson in prejudice, humility, and the difference between social class and true class. But one question lingered. How would Richard Caldwell, a man who built his empire on reputation, survive the fact that his arrogance and cruelty had been exposed in the most public way possible? The answer came fast. Marcus's video spread like wildfire in less than 24 hours. Millionaire Humiliates legendary ballerina was trending worldwide, with millions of views and outraged comments. Richard woke the next morning to find his empire collapsing, contracts worth millions gone overnight, partners demanding an emergency meeting, Eleanor refusing to leave their bedroom, ashamed to face the world. Dad, Daniel said, finding him in his office surrounded by headlines. The board has voted. You have 1 hour to resign or you'll be removed by force. Richard looked at his son, seeing for the first time not obedience, but resolve. You did this, he whispered. You betrayed me. No, Daniel answered calmly. You betrayed yourself the moment you decided arrogance was worth more than humanity. Meanwhile, Maya's world transformed overnight. Offers poured in, 3 international ballet companies, inviting her to choreograph Lincoln Hall, offering a solo performance. Producers in Hollywood eager to tell her story, but the offer that touched her most came from the children at the community school, where she once taught before taking cleaning jobs. They pooled their savings, just $23 to offer her a scholarship too. Return to teaching, I'll take it, Maya said through tears. But on one condition, let's turn this into something bigger. 6 months later, the Maya Leone Center for the Arts opened in the heart of the city. Funded by donations from around the globe, after her story inspired millions, Daniel Caldwell, now leading a reformed version of the family company centered on social responsibility, was the first major donor raise for Richard. He lost it all: his business, his reputation, his family. Eleanor filed for divorce and moved abroad. He was last seen working as a low-level consultant, a broken shadow of the man who once believed. Wealth gave him the right to humiliate others. You know what impresses me most, Marcus said at the center's opening, watching Maya guide a class of smiling, diverse children. It wasn't just victory over prejudice. It was proof of how true nobility responds to cruelty. Maya, once again recognized as one of the greatest artists of her time, smiled gently as she watched her new students take their very first ballet steps. Sometimes, Maya said softly, we have to lose everything to discover who we really are, and sometimes people have to lose everything to learn who they should never have tried to be. Daniel walked up, holding flowers from the garden he had planted around the new center himself, ready for dinner. He asked, offering his arm. Ready, Maya replied, accepting not only his arm, but the new life she had built from the ashes of the old one. Her true revenge was never destroying Richard Caldwell. It was creating something so beautiful, so inspiring, that his cruelty seemed insignificant beside it. She proved that when we face prejudice with dignity, when we answer hatred with excellence, we don't just win, we transform the world around us. And what about you? Have you ever faced someone who tried to crush your dreams with prejudice? Have you ever been underestimated for who you are? Share your story in the comments and subscribe for more stories that prove the best response to those who belittle us is simply to be extraordinary.